Hi, I'm Gina-R-Farrar, reinvention coach, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap podcast, and leader of this amazing global community of women. If you are approaching midlife or are already in the thick of it, welcome home. Please grab a cup of something wonderful and join me for some real talk, practical strategies, and a big dose of sisterhood. I am so glad you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here. Welcome back to the program. This week, we are talking about redefining retirement for modern career women. I will be speaking with two women who have created a movement called lustre.net. And the mission is to redefine retirement for modern career women by confronting outdated concepts, defying stereotypes, and raising their collective voices to ensure that retirement for all of us is shaped by women and for women. Erica-Baird and Karen-Wagner are retired lawyers. They are here today to share their mission and message and passion. Erica, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Gina, for having me.
My pleasure. And Karen, thank you for being on the show today.
Absolutely, my pleasure too. We're looking forward to speaking with you.
You know, you have such a vibrant community from what I can tell in researching you, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with two women who have really kind of lived the American dream. And then when you came to that point where the transition came, you decided to just jump and do something exciting and vibrant and new that's bringing along a community of women to shift the way we feel about ourselves as we age in our careers, you know, and in our futures. And I'm so excited to hear how you came to, what was it that led the both of you to come together and then to create this community in lustre.net about really vibrantly living this different kind of retirement. And what does that mean to you both?
Well, I guess I'll start. Years ago, in the early 70s, when we both started practicing law, I guess in the mid-70s, we were a small band of sisters. There weren't a lot of women out there that had decided or thought that they had decided that they wanted to practice law as a career. And Karen and I met each other and quickly bonded because while we saw ourselves fading into a kind of very gray and male environment, after a year or two, we were getting our rebelliousness was beginning to show. And we started wearing colored shoes and dresses and leather and all sorts of weird things. So in her world where Karen was working, she stood out. And in my world, I stood out. And so we quickly came together and became friends. And over time, I became a client. I went in-house as a lawyer, and Karen was an outside law firm, and my client became a client of hers and her firms. And so we worked together over the years. And as retirement approached, this is kind of condensing it all, but as retirement approached, we said, oh, let's do something together. That would be fun. And we thought, okay, what skills do we have? And we went through that whole analysis and said, okay, well, we may not want to practice law, but we have a lot of crisis management skills and writing skills and PR skills and consulting skills and all sorts of stuff. And we'll go do that. And in fact, maybe we'll even do it for free for causes and purposes that we care about. And so we said, okay, let's do that. And we went out in the world and everybody said, no, thanks. So, you know, what are two older ladies or old ladies? We don't know what to do with you. You're disruptive. You know, we love talking to you. Please come around so we can chat and have lunch. But other than that, we don't know what we should do with you, right, Karen? I mean, it was was bizarre. So all of a sudden we're sitting on the top of the world, right? And we're, you know, these kind of high-powered lawyers, and we're feeling pretty good about ourselves. And all of a sudden we're untethered from the organizations which we had worked for so many decades, really. And we were done. I mean, we were irrelevant. We were old. Karen talks about going to a cocktail party and nobody wanted to talk to her anymore, right? I mean, so we kind of got depressed, not clinically, I hope, but depressed, and couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. And then, Karen, I'll turn it over to you. And so we kind of sat on a park bench in Madison Square Park one day and said, this is just not right. What's happening? And we started researching, and I'll turn it over to Karen to take the story further.
Yes, what we did really was call on our legal skills, which have a lot to do with figuring out what the facts are and then figuring out what they mean. So we said, now, how could this be happening? And how come we didn't figure out ahead of time this would be happening? So we got ourselves an office and we agreed to meet regularly, and we read a lot of things about retirement, about this, about that. And we started to realize something that was interesting to us, actually several things. One thing was that we were really at the forefront of the first very, very large group of women who retired after basically pushing their way into the workforce. So we were new in that regard. We were people who had loved our jobs, we valued working, we loved being in the world, and we really weren't ready to go and sit in a rocking chair somewhere. And the other thing that we learned was we had probably 3 decades of life ahead of us. So unlike the men who were the retirees when this whole idea of retirement was invented back in the 1950s, when life expectancy ran to 3 to 5 years after retirement. Most retirees were men, and they'd had a long and hard time because they'd been through World War II and the Depression, and life had been tough. And they were ready for 3 or 4 years in the Sun Belt and having fun with their companions. But that's not where we are today. Where we are today is women who loved our jobs, who did a lot of things while we worked. As you very well know, you have to multitask with children and a spouse and the world and everything else. And we wanted to stay in the mix. And we also realized people, and for 30 years, we have to stay in the mix. And we realized that people did not quite understand who we were and what we wanted. So when we were sitting on that park bench on that fateful day, that's what we said. We said, okay, people don't see us for who we are. They think of us as little old ladies, going and watching the roses grow or something. They just don't know we're here yet. So we're going to go out there and show people just who we are. And I said, well, maybe we'll start a blog. And Erica said, well, that's a good idea. How do you do that? And I said, I have no idea. I have no clue what a blog is. But let's figure it out. So we figured out, with the help of a lot of much younger people, what a blog was, what the internet was, what social media was, all kinds of things. And we started lustre.net for the purpose of showing other people, but also our own group, what we looked like, what we could do, what our skills were, what we wanted, and to try to put ourselves on the map.
Yeah, just to add to that, in 2016, when we started this, we didn't see any images out there of older women that were like us. I mean, yes, there was Jane Fonda, and yes, there was Helen Mirren, but A, they were still working, and B, we're not going to be them. So we're not going to live their lives, we're going to look like them, we're not going to, all those things. They were not us. And so when we were doing the research, for example, we found things like in 2016, 70% of the depiction of older people in movies and TV and cable were all men. There were 30% of them were some sort of women, generally, tending roses and rocking chairs and grandchildren and all that kind of stuff. But there were no women. And so we looked hard to say, where are the women like us? Where are the pictures? Where are the role models? Where are the anything? And there was absolutely nothing. So when Karen talks about how we started a blog, we said, where are the people that we've spent our careers with? Where did they go? And we saw them on the streets occasionally, but we didn't see any images in the media. And we all know, you particularly, Gina, that, how other people think of you is a lot of imagery, but it also affects how you think about yourself. And so when we started our blog, we had two purposes. One is to say to the world, we're not those people, we're these people. And number two, to say to ourselves, we shouldn't be walking around with our shoulders bent and our, embarrassed about who we are now and talking only about our past. We should be talking about we're confident. We are the women we always have been, and we have a whole, as Karen says, decades ahead of us to do more things. We have another third of our life to live, so we should live it.
I so heartily agree. It's interesting because the world that I moved in for 30 years was the beauty industry. And that makes a really interesting dynamic for aging as well, because, the beauty industry loves the young. I was watching a show on TV that was having contestants. I don't think any of them was over 23. And I know so many talented people well into their 50s. I mean, just uber talented people. And it's interesting how it's almost like there's this point where we tick over and collectively people are like, oh, they're done. They're finished. They're over the hill. I don't know what the term is that's going on in people's heads. And what I hear you saying is kind of what I have been feeling like, it's almost like a void. You get to this point and then there's just a void and you're thinking to yourself, but I don't want to live that way. That's what I hear you guys saying. So how did you find your community, and what was your big kind of like rally call, and how did you get out there with your message to help women really recognize that, hey, retirement's not the end, it's the beginning, right?
Well, I think our rallying cry was, we're not done. Right? So I think we met with a lot of women that we knew, and we all said to each other, we've got stuff to do. And we don't want to rest on our laurels. We don't want to talk about our past. We want to talk about the future. And we have things to do, places to go, people to see. We want to be out there. And so I think we're not done began to be the rallying cry.
I was thinking you pretty much were the same women when you went into law and realized that you were in this gray world that you didn't want to be. You two are just rebels with a cause. You're just doing it again, at a different season of your life, which is so inspiring. Now, Karen, what was it for you that really made you realize that this was something that was needed? Like, what motivated you to go from I'm retiring to next steps?
Well, among the things that did it for me was the reaction of people around me. As Erica mentioned, we were people who were pretty sought after for our legal advice, and we all thought of ourselves as kind of fun people too. People like to be around us. And we both have children. And once we were in that retirement mode, either inching towards it or actually in it, my children got nervous that I would stay home all day long and wait to pounce on them and tell them what to do next. My husband was worried, like, oh my God, now what am I going to do with her? And my friends who still work were concerned, we don't have time to hang out with you all day long. So I thought to myself, okay, fair enough. This is on me. I have to figure out what am I going to do. And I, for a while, as Erica noted, I flirted for a little while with getting another job. And that was not going to happen. And number two was kind of unimaginative. So then together we both said, all right, here we are at this new place. We do have a lot of skills. We have a foundation that we've created from living for 65 years. We're not starting at the bottom. We're starting at the top. Now, where are we going to go from here? And so that was really the motivation. Was first of all dismay. But after I got over the dismay, it was, wow, this is an opportunity. Now what are we going to do? This is great. And Erica was a great companion to have during this epiphany, because she too was up for it, something different, something that we had not done before, something we didn't know anybody who was doing at all. And we said, great, this is going to be fun. So we started having fun. That was really one of the huge benefits of figuring this out.
I love that, because it's a real sense of curiosity, right? Questioning the future instead of it just accepting what the norm would be, if you will. That's one of the things that I admire is when I found you two ladies, I thought are a couple of women who are walking that talk for women who, you said it's unimaginative to get another job, but think about how we are, we're wired, right? You work,
Right.
and you do a certain kind of job or you do a certain kind of thing. So how do you help women transition? Like, what kind of challenges do women bring to the table? Or what is the kind of community that you found? Did it start with people asking for help, or did you just have women that were dry and thirsty and so excited to have a kindred spirit to connect to?
Erica?
Okay. I think it was, we didn't find women necessarily, but we were part of a group of women that we knew, struggling with this question of who am I now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't so much, as a group of women that we were lacking things to do, because you can always kind of find things to do. And women are particularly good at that since we've multitasked our whole lives. But it was, who am I? If I am not a lawyer working at a law firm or wherever, what am I when I don't have my job to define me? And what is, just me, not me in relationship to my family, but just me. And so we started really getting out there and met with the same thing that Gina, you said was so much fun for you. We met with lots and lots of women. Some we knew, some we were introduced to, and said, what is it that you're feeling? How are you approaching this? And everybody was feeling kind of at sixes and sevens, kind of, what am I doing? And so it was more that we were kind of wrapping up all the things that we were being told and putting it out there again. And I think that's been the appeal, that we've kind of done the thinking to say, the who am I now is more critical than you thought. You thought you knew who you were, but all of a sudden you don't. And so if you start there, it starts to make sense. Mm-hmm. And so we started writing a lot about, how do you process this? How do you think about it? The minute you retire, how do you think about it? A month after you retire, how do you think about it long term?
It's such a big mindset shift, isn't it? Because now I'm younger than you guys, but when I left that corporate beauty world, I was just like, when I hit 50, I'm not slinging lipsticks anymore. I'm not going to try to, work my way into whatever. I'm like, I'm done. I've done almost 18 years of this. I don't want to. I think it's good to have representation in the beauty industry, but I just was like, I'm done. But what was interesting is when I said, okay, the company was going through these huge shifts. They were letting people go. So I said, look, I'm going to leave. This young girl can keep her job. I'm out of here. And the company was like, oh, can you give us your letter? I was like, wow, that was quick after 18 years. And second of all, everyone's like, oh, you're retiring. And I remember thinking, I'm 49. I'm not retired. I'm quitting. I mean, what? It's like this whole idea of you're older. And I was like, maybe. There were a couple of women in my decade, but people were really like pushing this idea like, oh, you're going to retire and you're going to, I don't know. They kind of put this image out there like, I don't know. It's like some kind of Shangri-La, but nobody knows exactly what you're going to be doing. And I was like, I got another 40, 50 years to live potentially. And you're asking me, you're pushing me into retirement at 49. I was like, what? So a little bit of me understands what you guys are going through. And it's true. People pull back when you shift out of the quote working world into this void, of everyone trying to figure out who the heck we are. And I mentioned right before we hit record that this is like, and Erica, you put it very well. This is our second coming of age. Here we are at this crossroads and everyone's like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And we're like, oh, I don't know, And I love the question, who am I? Let's talk a little bit about that. What was your process, Erica, in finding out who you were? And Karen, what was yours? Like, let my listeners kind of understand, what was that process like for you and how did you work through that?
I think that the first thing was that I didn't expect it. it was kind of surprising to me that we had been going to school and we were students, and then we went to professional school and we were, in law school, and then we were working as lawyers and we were lawyers. And I had never really thought about, okay, when I drop off that precipice, how do I fill in that blank? I never had talked about myself in the past. And so it seemed very uncomfortable the first time I went out and somebody said, so what do you do? Which is, of course, at least a common question. And your first response is, I can't say I'm retired. I just can't say I'm retired. So what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And the second thought is, well, maybe I'll say I was. And the minute that starts to come out of your mouth, that sounds really weird. I was. It's like I was dead, now, but I used to be alive. And so the process was kind of saying, I don't like any of these scenarios. I've got to build a new identity based on my current circumstances. And part of that was understanding that key to my feelings about who I am is having a purpose that is bigger than myself, that is bigger than my family, that is bigger than Gina, you're living that dream, right? Bigger than the people that have to love you because they're required to, and feeling that I'm a part of that. And so when I realized that, then things started to fall into place. Where was the work that I wanted to do for the next third of my life? Because that work would help me define myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like there is a temptation to fall back into a role, because like you were pointing out, Erica, it's like you go from role to role to role to role to retired, and you're like, and what, right? So Karen, what was your journey?
Well, it was very, very similar. I too had identified very closely with my work, and it took me a while to internalize the fact that I was going to feel very different. First of all, I had to mourn really what I had lost, which I had loved, and it was gone. So I had to mourn it, and then I had to figure out what was going to happen next. And one thing, Gina, that you really alluded to is, for women, I think especially, although probably for everybody, this retirement thing is also tied up with age. So at the same time you're dealing with, I'm no longer a lawyer associated with this particular enterprise. I am something else, but I don't know what it is yet. And also some people think because I'm retired, I'm old. And what is that all about? Am I old? Is that good? Is that bad? And, so I agree with Erica. The way I think that we stay with the program is to figure out a purpose. And I certainly began to realize that because we are in the forefront of this wave of women, that we were having to fight several battles. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the battles was people made this assumption. If you were retired, that meant you could probably not walk very well, and you probably were going to lose your mind shortly. And you probably had no, that lady who falls down and can't get up, that's you. And so that's not an image we wanted. So we basically said, we're just going to fight that. I wouldn't call it ageism exactly. It's just that people don't really know we're here. So our mission is to say, we are here. We're going to be a force to be reckoned with. You're going to have to reckon with us because we're going to be active. And feeling that that was our purpose, I think, is what caused me to be able to start to pull together a new post-lawyer identity.
I think it's interesting, especially, Gina, you were in the beauty industry, because we thought a lot about women versus men. Is it harder, this state that we're in of retirement, for men versus women? And I think our answer is it's hard for everybody, for sure. Ageism is everywhere. But it is harder for women. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that women are much more judged on their looks and their appearance than men. And therefore, when you age and you don't look like your 23-year-old, beauty contest people that you probably made up for years or catered to, that there is the ageist inclination or biases are even stronger. And then the language, of course, follows that. So men are silver foxes and they're distinguished, and, all that sexy stuff. And women are hags, so, or whatever it is that, the language is about older women. And so I think it is somewhat harder. I think, Karen, you'd agree with that. I mean, it's harder, marginally harder for women in getting older and being retired than it is for men.
You're essentially creating a brand new paradigm, which there are probably pockets of women who completely wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying and how you feel about it, but they didn't know how to get there. They might be by themselves, being the one kind of odd woman in town who's not, wearing the muumuu and getting the hair set once a week.
That's exactly right. There are women like us, and they're not all exactly like us, all urban lawyer type women, but there are women all over the place, and as you say, all over the globe, who are facing the same question. All right, I've got 30 years ahead of me. I'm not going to be raising children anymore because they've gone. I'm not going to be working in a regular job, likely. What am I going to do? And so, yes, we have found quite a lot of people have communicated with us because of the website, lustre.net, to say, what a wonderful thought. I hadn't even thought about this. What am I going to do? I am not alone in this world. There are a bunch of us thinking about all these things. And that has been very gratifying too. So you're quite right.
There's like 3 words that popped up as you both were talking: relevance, invisible, and purpose. And those 3 words stood out to me because when you're working or even staying at home as a mom, like being the soccer mom, the whatever, there's a certain relevance to what you do, right? Meaning that you can kind of justify your existence, if you will. I don't mean to sound harsh, but it feels like I'm justified to be here and take up space because I'm the mom, I'm the lawyer, I'm the makeup artist, or whatever it is. And your purpose is kind of your role. Not that that's a bad thing, but when you get to this point where you retire or you stop traditionally working, let's say, because that's what I did. I wasn't of retirement age, but I was trying to move in a purposeful direction. There is this kind of invisibility. You get quickly forgotten. And I feel like that's an emotional journey that can be very difficult for people when you realize the whole world had no problem moving on. So you were in the mix and then you weren't. And now the purpose and the relevance you had is gone, essentially. It's not really, but essentially in your experience. Does that make sense? That's what I'm hearing.
Totally. Because when you're invisible, we all know this, right? When you're invisible, you're not seen, you're not heard, you're not valued, you're not respected, you're just invisible. And traditionally, in ageist societies like ours, it's convenient to make you invisible so that you don't have to be any of those, right? You can just put them aside and segregate older people from younger people. And I think Karen and I, believe all segregation is pretty insidious, but the separation, not to make a totally different point, but the separation of the old from the young, we think is really terrible. And it shouldn't happen, but it does happen if you render us invisible, right? Because then I shove you over to the side and I don't pay attention to you anymore. So I think, in our vision of what the best of all possible worlds of what retirement should look like, it would be everybody together with us, with our experience, helping the younger women particularly navigate the working world, showing them what it can look like, giving them some reason, or an additional reason to want to work and have a career so that you can be financially independent and have all those things that you have for the final third of your life.
Yes, I think that this whole question of why people want you sort of out of the way when you're older than 65 or maybe older than 25, really. But it's partly based on the assumption, I think, that if you're 65 or something like that, you are old, whatever that means, which means you're probably not going to live very long, and you're probably failing, and you're probably needy, and you're probably not productive in a social sense. And all of those assumptions are just wrong today. All of us, even the men are going to live 30 more years, and we're going to have something that really is new in society, and that is people who have experience, having lived this long, who are still fully functional. So they've got both sides of it working for them. So the idea that you would take those people and put them to the side is actually nuts. You should bring them in and use them for what they have. And so that's part of what we're trying to tell people is, look, we don't want to take, we want to give. So take from us.
Just was going to add, it's kind of, the assumption of marketers that we bought our last car, we're living in the place we're going to die, is all these assumptions when the research would tell you that you're what you choose to buy and how you choose to live and what you watch and all those things is more dependent on how you feel about yourself than your chronological age. So it's kind of like this tipsy world where stereotypes are making people behave in ways that really aren't rational. Mm-hmm. I mean, I haven't bought my last car. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to live in 10 years. I mean, everything is, who knows?
It's normalizing the process of aging and removing those invisible dividers like us and them, right? Because mm-hmm. I have to tell you, in the beauty industry, you see women in their 20s already trying not to age with surgical procedures and Botox. And I remember someone starting that, a lot of them were time. I worked with lots of young women. I didn't pay attention to age, to be completely honest. I'm kind of not good at knowing how old someone is. And then now that I'm on this end on social media and they're like, oh, I'm turning 30. I'm like, were you 2 when I worked with you? How is this possible? And I know that they've been doing Botox, or they're 35 and they've been doing Botox for 10 years. And I think it's unique to women. I think men are starting to kind of do the whole grooming and Botoxing and stuff, but you're right. That silver fox thing, that distinguished, there you can see that the virility of males carries a different image than as a woman ages. We don't have that thing to attach our aging to. So there's a certain bravery and courage, I think, aging as women that is required for us to be so much more aware and sure of who we are. I think it just requires a lot more of that than any other stage in our life, it feels like.
Totally agree.
Yes, I totally agree. But it requires that you switch your own head around pretty severely. You can't say, oh, I'm not going to worry about getting old. You have to rather say, I am thrilled to be where I am and to know what I know and still be fully functional and with this great runway ahead of me. What am I going to do next? This is wonderful. So I think, we've got to release ourselves from this assumption that somehow we're done.
Now, if I could ask, when you started your blog, what were the steps that you guys took? In other words, you get together on this park bench, you have this discussion, you realize this really sucks, and I'm not done yet. Okay. Right. So did you know right out the gate what your blog focus was going to be, or how did that process happen? Because we're 4 years out or so, 3.5 years from you building this incredible community. Tell me a little bit about that, because you're talking about the shift. So thinking you want to do something and starting something is part of the shift, right? And how did that look for you both?
Well, it was actually fairly funny because we had no idea what we were doing. We knew pretty early on what the message was. And the message was, we're not done and we have a great life ahead of us. Okay, that's fine. So now what do we do? How do we convey that message? And as I said, we decided to do a blog, but we didn't know really what a blog was. So we met some people, a bunch of mostly young men, actually, quite young men, who were in this business, and we sat down with them and said, okay, so how do you do this? And we wanted to make sure that they had some understanding of what we were trying to do. And we were amused when they said to us, oh, yes, my mother would be interested in this. So we said, okay, you're getting it now. And then they started explaining to us how you set up a website and the kinds of things you had to think about as far as how often you would put something out there and how you would get subscribers and how you choose pictures. Actually, Erica's daughter helped with that. She had very strong views about how you chose pictures. And I mean, lawyers really do not deal very much in visual images. So for us, this was a new thought. Okay, let's think about this. What are we trying to do with our pictures? So it was all very new and different, but pretty exciting because of that. And ultimately, this firm pulled together a website for us with our first 2 or 3 posts. And one day, I think it was in August or something, we called each other at like 6 a.m. I said, okay, we're pushing the button. And we pushed the button. And it was just to our first group of subscribers. And it was just most exciting. We got a very positive response. And then we had to learn a whole bunch of other things at that point about social media and how to get more followers and all kinds. And we've also done other things. We too ventured into podcasting, and we ventured into public events. And so we've done lots and lots of things. But that first process was just fascinating. Erica, maybe you want to expand on that?
It was funny. I mean, it was really there. We thought, we're smart. We know how to do stuff. We knew nothing. I mean, even the language was like French or something that we had never really been excellent about. But I think the hardest thing about the whole process is that as lawyers, we really stand behind our clients. I mean, we make our clients look good. We're not public personas. We were very aggressive and confident in our way, but it was all about the client. And all of a sudden, all these young people are saying, well, you have to reveal yourself and you have to show, you have to tell people about yourself and you have to talk about yourself. And we're going, oh, that sounds awful. How am I going to do that? And they said, well, that's what people do on the internet. They talk about themselves, what they think, who they are, and Instagram and pictures. And that was such a hump, I think, for both of us to say, really? I got to talk about myself? And so that has been a gradual, part of that process of opening that curtain a little bit to our own lives and saying, we need to be, if we're going to be role models to people we don't know, as opposed to role models in our past life to people we do know, then we do have to reveal both the good and the bad and the hard parts and the easy parts. And we can't have this kind of, persona out there that's the lawyer that's going to fix things for you. We have to say, this was hard, this was easy, we're not good at this, we suck at that, whatever. If we're really going to get the kind of traction and people are going to identify with us and say, maybe this is a journey I want to go on with you. So I would add that. But Karen, maybe you want to talk about our office too, because that was a key piece.
That was a key piece. We, as one of the first things we did, we said, all right, this is going to be work for us. We're not going to sit at home and call each other on the phone and do things either with each other or separately. We're going to be together in an office. We're going to separate this from our home lives. And we got an office in WeWork in New York City. And the first WeWork we were in, which was in what used to be the Goldman Sachs headquarters, which was funny, we thought. We were surrounded by young people, probably in their 20s, which was totally fine. But the big office right near us, where they did something that we really couldn't understand, there were probably 10 people there. They had successful things happen to them every day. And every day they basically partied with champagne and high fives and this and this. And we're like, wow, we missed something in our earlier lives because we never lived like that. But it got to be a little too noisy, so we actually left that WeWork and went to a more sedate WeWork where we were next to more sedate people. But we very much enjoyed being there, and we very much enjoy sitting in our WeWork. As you may or may not know, all of the offices are glass, so people walk by and they can see you. Well, when we arrived at WeWork in both of these offices, people would look at us like, God, who are these old ladies? What are they doing here? But so that was funny. But we really enjoyed being there very much. And we haven't been there much lately because of COVID, but we hope to go back very soon to see how people are doing. But that community of people, including so many young people, was fun. It was fun to be with them.
One of the great things about what you're saying, and I totally understand it because I did a co-working space for quite a while as well, is there is something to getting out of the house
Yes.
And I think we all understand that now. I think we
do.
We're all like, get me out of the house, even younger people. But, it's interesting. In order for something to change, someone has to take the charge, right? They need to go in front. And I feel that what you ladies are doing is you're taking that charge. You're stepping out in the front, and you are not only encouraging women who are retired or going to retire, but you're actually re-educating young people in that your life doesn't end at an age. An age is just a number. You choose what your life equals. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think, Gina, you're onto something, because I think change is choice, right? And for us, choosing what we wanted to do now meant analyzing what we missed. We certainly didn't miss everything about working, that's for sure. But we did miss the community. We did miss putting on a different armor or clothes and going someplace else to be with other people. And so we had to, as we're making choices, we had to say that's a part of our former lives that we choose to try to replicate. So I think, and that can be a process that goes on in retirement, and it obviously can be in a process when your whole life. When you decide to change something, you have to think about what it is that you really want. It's not a simple answer, I want a new job. It's really, what do I want in this new job? What do I like about my old job? What don't I like? What do I want to make sure I still have? What do I want to get rid of?
There's a freedom of change in this season of life. If you think about it, when you're young, you go to college. Most people go to college. If they don't, they choose a job. And then it's like you just kind of mechanically, in a lot of ways, live life by expectation for a very long time. This is what we expect of you. You go to school, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, whatever it is, it all is kind of laid out for you, sort of. I feel like this season of life, midlife and beyond, is not quite so laid out. It's a lot more vague other than the stereotypes. But I love how you said that you need to analyze what you missed, because there's something to be said for, in all of those years of expectation, us living up to expectations, us doing what we are, quote, supposed to do. Now we have the freedom of choice, right? And we have to basically date ourselves for a while, like go on a date with you and being like, hey, how are you? Who are you? What are you like? Yeah, that's what I keep hearing you say. And I love the idea of that investigation. We finally have an opportunity. We're kind of outside expectations, sort of. I mean, there's that negative expectation, but it's not like people are planning your life anymore. So now you kind of get a say in the thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It's, I think what you're saying is, among other things, it's not, their structure is gone. So you get to figure it out. In fact, you have to figure it out. And that is both, at first, it's a shock, but then you realize it's a great opportunity. So as Erica said, you make a new structure, and this time you make it with the stuff you liked from before and without the stuff you didn't like. So that's pretty exciting.
And did you find that you both had maybe some things that either you'd forgotten that you enjoyed, or did you discover new things because now you had time to discover?
Totally. I mean, I think that we had forgotten that we liked the rebelliousness in ourselves. We forgot. Well, we forgot that we would never been our own bosses in a way. We both had careers where we were very much in charge. We ran groups, we ran our practice, we were the boss of our lives within a larger structure, but we never had the freedom to call all the shots, right? For starters, we're lawyers, we have clients, so they call the shots. But I think I had forgotten what it was like to be totally in charge of yourself. And so that was different, to have nobody to whom you were accountable and responsible. And that was good and bad, because I think Karen and I are both people that like accountability and responsibility and like structure, for example. I mean, I think so. And so it's amazing not to have it, but it's hard to create it, but it's challenging and fun at the same time. So that's, I don't know, Karen, was there something that surprised you?
A lot of it surprised me. Yes. I mean, I had never sort of started my own business before, which is basically what we're doing. There's a lot of really good things to it. Of course, there are other parts to it that I don't like at all. And that is, I hate accounting, but I seem to have turned into the accountant. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, there's positives and negatives. But the idea of creating a new business for yourself to achieve a goal that you have articulated and you know what it is, you just don't know exactly how to get there, that is very exciting. And that is a first. It's not something that I have forgotten because it's not something I ever knew. So I am very much enjoying that part of the whole thing.
You said something really important there, which is you're articulating a goal. You know where you want to go, but you don't exactly know how to get there. I think that's a key thing for people to understand, that the how is not always so clear when you start.
Right. Right. It takes some time. It takes work. I mean, by the time you're our age, which, Gina, one day you will be many years from now, but by the time you're our age, you know that nothing comes without work. You're going to have to work at the stuff. And the good thing about doing something totally new is it's going to take more work because you don't know what you're doing. But you should have the confidence of knowing you will achieve the result at some point because you know how to work and you know how to learn and you know how to put things together. And we met a public health expert who said something that is sort of obvious, but is kind of fascinating. And that is that people of our age are the best problem solvers, especially women, again, because women solve problems from day one and they get really good at solving problems. So it's a very useful characteristic to have.
When you talk about the problem solving and what Erica said earlier about self-promotion, I'm linking those two in. We're used to solving problems for other people, and we're used to living our lives for other people. And it is really uncomfortable to do so much focus on ourselves. At least this is what I found. Like, I am not great at self-promotion. I'm this extrovert. I'm a talker, not a problem. I will talk to trees, people. I don't care. I'll talk to anybody. But when it comes to that self-promotion, it just feels so weird because we've lived our lives for, you did it for your clients. I've lived for my clients as a makeup artist. What do you want? How can I make you happy? Right? What do you need? And now here we are needing to promote ourselves. And it's a difficult shift. I think it is, and really recognizing that I'm doing this for me and not feeling like we're selfish. Did you struggle with that as well?
Totally. I mean, totally. I've never thought that selfish. I was brought up by a grandmother who insisted that her granddaughters understand that the word selfish is a good word. So I've never defined it in a way that was negative. But this seemed so self-promoting. I mean, it just seemed so yucky, of saying I have to be about me and sell me. Not my skills, me. And I think that was the part that was hard, that part, but also figuring out what I was selling. I mean, I didn't even know that. So, you're kind of out there saying, I'm untethered from everything that I did in my past, even your family, really, because the kids are up and gone and, spouse is doing whatever spouse is doing. And there I am myself saying, who am I? What am I? What is my purpose? Who's going to appreciate it? Who's going to value it? All those things. How am I going to make myself visible? It was really tough, I think, in the beginning. I think thankfully we had each other. I think community is really important. I think we know a number of women that have gotten themselves in trouble because they retreated. It's kind of like the word retire. They really retreated into themselves and they spent well over a year in fairly serious depression, having had fabulous careers, because they didn't have somebody to kind of say, no, today we're getting dressed and going to do this, or, I just met this person at this thing and we're going to go do that. Or Karen took flying lessons and I took design classes and met a whole new bunch of people, but we egged each other on, really. And so I think that part was really important too.
Yeah, that's critical. And that is, of course, a critical part of Lustre, making sure everybody knows there are a lot of us. And so you shouldn't feel isolated. Come join us. You're not all going to do what we did, but you think about what you want to do and you'll be able to do something exciting, but you should have friends who can do this with you or meet other women who are doing other things, and just don't feel alone and isolated, because you're not.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that you both took classes, and that's something that I try to encourage women to do, is just try things. We're so used to achieving that this particular season, I mean, you're going to achieve something, but not everything you try is going to be the thing that you're going to become the achiever at. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a discovery process.
Exactly. And by the time you are retiring, you're entitled to do that. You're entitled to do something new, and you are also entitled to fail miserably. And if you do, then you know, because you've done this before, not you, but anybody of our age, you get over this. You just say, okay, I'm going to do something else now. I'm going to pick myself up and go do something else. So yes, absolutely.
Now I have a final question for you ladies, although I would love to continue to talk because I would love to continue to talk. You guys are fascinating and such a wonderful mindset. And I love having role models. I'm seeking out role models. I'm trying to lead what's behind me, and I'm looking for people to follow. And so I honor your journey, and I would love if you could sit down face to face with my listeners and even your own community. What are 3 things from each of you that you really want them to hear from your heart to theirs? Let's go ahead and start with Karen.
Well, if I'm speaking to the community of women who is thinking about or actually is retired, I guess I would say these 3 things. Number 1, retirement is a process. And the first part of the process is unnerving, because you're going to be destabilized and you're going to be sad because you're missing your job and you're not going to know which end is up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, remember that you have an incredible set of skills and experience behind you. And that means you're going to figure this out, whatever it is. You will figure it out. You will come out the other side. You have to go through the process. You can't eliminate any steps, but you will go through it. And when you come out the other side, you will find something pretty great to do. And the third one is, always make sure you're wearing clothes that you really like, so that you make yourself happy and you make sure everybody else knows you are confident that you're going to get somewhere great today.
Good one. All right, Miss Erica, what are your 3?
I'm going to put aside the clothes because Karen covered that. I think my 3 would be to be visible, to be out there as the cool women that we are. There is absolutely nothing cooler than a confident older woman. So I think that's probably my first one. My second one is that this is a journey, right? It's not going to be easy and it's going to take some work, but finding purpose is going to be a key part in figuring out who you are now. That one of the key elements of that journey is going to be to find what you're passionate about, whatever it is, with no holds barred. As you said, it's kind of like a tabula rasa. You can do whatever you want. And then I think the third thing is, we've done a lot of great things, as Karen said. And so we can do this too. We can defy the stereotypes that hold us back. We can change the world. We changed before. When we started working, we are women who worked. We had careers. We changed what women who work look like, right? And how they behaved. And we got a seat at the table and we were visible and relevant and all those things that you were talking about, Gina, before. So we can do it again. And let's do it again. Let's flaunt those stereotypes. Let's show people who we are now, and let's work at it and do it. We have an obligation to the generation that comes after us.
Absolutely. And it's such a visible world now, isn't it, that we actually have the opportunity to show the world literally on the internet. what it looks like. That gives us an advantage, does it not?
It does. It does.
Because they can see it, they're not
Yes.
hearing about it. But I want to honor both of you, Erica and Karen, for doing the brave and courageous thing. And to you, it may not seem so much that, but it really is for someone to challenge the status quo, to challenge the stories, the paradigms, the mindsets that are really so ingrained, and we've all experienced it on a different level. You realize that you get to decide your relevance, and you ladies have shown by your life choices since you retired from the, quote, working world. What does it look like to be a vibrant, exciting, relevant woman, not invisible, not lost, but purposeful and passionate? And I'm so honored to have spent time with you and to virtually connect with two women who were willing to change the world, because change starts with one. In this case, it started with two, and I really believe wholeheartedly in what you're doing. And I want to thank you for taking that charge for women like myself and those who come behind me.
Gina, thank you for such a wonderful conversation. We enjoyed it so much. We hope we stay in touch.
I would love to.
That would be wonderful. Yes, thank you, Gina. It's been a really fun thing to talk to you.
My pleasure. So today, friends, I've been speaking with Erica-Baird and Karen-Wagner, retired lawyers who are taking the charge on the mission to redefine retirement for modern career women. And you can find them at lustre.net. You can also head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 194. I will have a link to them and their social media. And while you're there, please join my tribe, leave your name and email address. I send out periodic encouraging emails. Friends, this is a conversation that needs to be had. And Karen and Erica have started it. Those of us who are entering this season of life or are already in this season of life have the choice to join this mission and continue to mentor those around us. That life doesn't end at a certain age or a certain season of life. There are seasons of life, and each one has something wonderful to offer. So we invite you to check out lustre.net, to connect to a community of women that will encourage you to continue to live a life of vibrancy and relevance and purpose and passion. Because if you are here breathing today, you have something to do in this world. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to talking with you again next week. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.